Hi all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. If you watched my last video, or you're otherwise familiar with the case of the sheriff who shot and ended the life of a judge who he worked closely with and was supposedly friends with, in the judge's chamber in a courthouse in Kentucky, then to keep you updated on the case, the sheriff, Sean Steins, also known as Mickey Steins, was arraigned today. And during his arraignment, he pled not guilty to the first-degree murder charge against him. Even though there's said to be a video that captured the moments leading up to and the moment that Sheriff Steins pulled his weapon and fired it at Judge Kevin Mullins multiple times during a private meeting in Judge Mullins' chambers on September 19th of 2024. As a matter of fact, I played an interview with a court employee who claimed that he was told the video showed the sheriff and the judge sitting in the judge's chambers when the judge showed Sheriff Steins his phone right before the sheriff stood up and began firing at Judge Mullins. That interview is my last video, if you want to go check it out. So, he claims the private meeting between the sheriff and the judge was video recorded. But what the sheriff saw on Judge Mullins' phone remains a mystery. There are rumors, of course, going around online that it may have had something to do with the sheriff's daughter. But we don't have any proof of that. We don't know that that's true at all at this point. But the sheriff was deposed about what he knew about a scandal involving his former deputy sheriff taking advantage of a female defendant in Judge Mullins' chambers over a period of 6 months, just days before he took the judge's life. And some interesting details surrounding that scandal were shared by the attorney who questioned Sheriff Steins during his deposition, during an interview on Court TV. Let me start with showing you Sheriff Steins' arraignment. Then we'll get into more of some of the interesting details starting to come out about this case.
All right, I'm going to call the case of Commonwealth versus Sean Steins, 24F 147, Letcher District Court. Is the Commonwealth present?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Judge Ramsey Dallum on behalf of the Commonwealth.
And Jackie Steele also on behalf of the Commonwealth, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. And I see the defendant, is that the defendant at the Leslie County Detention Center?
Yes, Your Honor.
And who's standing next to him?
I'm Josh Miller, Public Defender of the Capital Trials Branch.
Dana Clark, Jailer, Leslie County.
All right, thank you. And has the defendant filed a petition for indigency?
Not at this point, Your Honor.
Okay. And what about the Commonwealth? Does Commonwealth want to make any statements before I proceed with arraignment?
No, Your Honor. Other than I don't know why Mr. Miller is present. If he's not filed out an agency paperwork, his office has not been appointed. I don't know that he has any reason to be here as in an official capacity as an attorney.
Right. Mr. Miller, do you believe that he's entitled to a public defender at this time?
I do, Your Honor.
And why is that?
This is a capital eligible case, and I believe that the cost of defending ethical defense of a capital eligible case will exceed his means.
Would you like to respond to that, Mr. Steele?
I would, Your Honor. A couple of things. One, I believe what he's telling me is that he's been out soliciting a client, which is obviously not allowed under our ethical obligations as attorneys. Two, even if he hasn't, if he has and he's been out trying to discern how much his financial capacities are, he's wasting state resources without an appointment. And this court is the party that appoints an attorney, not DPA, whatever division, just because they think he's going to need one.
Would you like to respond to that, Mr. Miller?
Your Honor, in cases like this, it is essential that a defense investigation start immediately, and I haven't solicited anything, but advised Mr. Steins of his rights. And if the court appoints us, we will represent him.
Is he still the sheriff of Leslie County?
At this point, I believe so.
Letcher.
Letcher County.
Judge, I can't speak to that, and he currently is still the sheriff of Letcher County.
Yeah, well, I don't think he would qualify as an indigent defendant.
Well, sir, we're happy to, or Mr. Steins is happy to put any paperwork, file anything that would help the court make that determination. Obviously, the court is the one that appoints us.
Has he filed an affidavit for indigency?
Not at this point, Your Honor.
All right, we'll proceed with formal arraignment. Are you Sean Steins?
Yes, sir.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can't be used against you. Have your silence can't be used to find you guilty. County attorney must prove your guilt, or the Commonwealth must prove your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the right to call witnesses on your behalf. You have the right to cross-examine witnesses called against you. You have the right to a speedy and public trial by a jury of your peers. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, I'll appoint one to represent you. And you have the right to appeal any decision that I make. You're charged with murder, a capital offense here in Kentucky, a Class A felony, punishable by 20 to 50 years in prison, 25 years to life in prison, 25 years to life without the possibility of parole, and the possibility of the death penalty. Do you have an attorney, Mr. Steins?
I have not hired one.
Have you tried to hire an attorney? Have you spoken to any attorneys about taking your case?
No, no, sir.
And are you telling me that you don't have the means to, do you not have the means? Do you own a home?
Yes.
Do you own any other real estate?
Got a place in Tennessee, but I still owe for it with the bank.
Yeah, do you know how much equity you have in your own home?
My home and my property is paid for.
And do you have an estimated value of that real property?
I think the PBA's got it on for about 45,000.
And what's your income?
It's based on statute. I think this year it was going to be 115,000.
Do you have money savings, bank accounts?
I had a check-ins.
Sir, it's my understanding that he's in the process of losing his job as the sheriff of Letcher County, obviously, and will not have income going forward. His family is not prepared for this eventuality. And again, I think the cost of defending one of these cases can reach well into this several $100,000.
You're entitled to, since you're charged with a felony, you're entitled to have a preliminary hearing within 10 days from the date of this arraignment. Do you believe you'll be able to obtain counsel to represent you on these charges within those 10 days?
I hope so. It's kind of hard, where I'm at, having contact with people I need to.
The court recognizes that it is going to take a considerable amount of money to retain an attorney to represent you on this capital offense. However, I don't believe you do at this time qualify as for public assistance due to the fact that you aren't indigent. However, based on the circumstances of this case and the fact that we do need to have a preliminary hearing within 10 days, I'm going to appoint the public defender's office to represent you for the limited purpose of assisting you at your preliminary hearing. If and when this case does proceed to circuit court, the circuit court may require you to hire your own counsel. Do you understand that, Mr. Steins?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll enter does he want to enter a plea at this time?
Your Honor, he would enter a plea of not guilty and request a date for preliminary hearing.
All right, we'll set the preliminary hearing next Tuesday, October the 1st at 1 o'clock in West Liberty, Kentucky.
Excuse me, Your Honor, we said October 1st at 1 o'clock.
Yes, October 1st at 1 o'clock in West Liberty, Kentucky at the Morgan County Judicial Center.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else before we adjourn this hearing?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
No,
Just
Your
one
Honor.
thing, Judge. I do have one thing, Judge, just for clarification. In regards to
Yeah.
transportation for the defendant, how would the court prefer? I don't care to do an order for that to be done.
I was thinking that we would have the state police post 8 transport if they would. I don't know that we'll need an order. I'll just request it, and if that's a problem, we can work out other transportation. Is that all?
Nothing further from our end, Your Honor.
All right, this hearing's adjourned.
Now, I was wondering if Judge Mullins was also set to be deposed about the acts that took place in his chamber by the former deputy sheriff who was also Judge Mullins' bailiff. But according to the interview I'm going to play for you shortly with the attorney for the female victim, he was not. I find that interesting, since his bailiff admitted to taking advantage of a female defendant, requiring her to perform colorful acts for him in the judge's chamber in order to stay out of jail. But the attorney says in the interview that the judge was not going to be deposed in the case, but the sheriff was. And not only does he say the judge was not scheduled to be deposed about what he knew or didn't know about what was going on in his chambers, the attorney also says that Judge Mullins did not recuse himself from presiding over the case, which the attorney for the victim found to be very unsettling. I'd have to say I agree. Stick around for his interview. He shares some really good information.
But let's get some more information. Joining us live from the Leslie County Detention Center in Kentucky, Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson is with us. And Matt, tomorrow, big day. The sheriff will face a judge for the first time. And this is, I mean, he spent a career in law enforcement, first time on this side of the courtroom or this side of the law.
That's right, Vinny. Nice to see you. So we have the Letcher County Sheriff, who is still sheriff. He hasn't resigned just yet. Mickey Steins, he's in this jail here behind me. And to avoid any sort of conflict of interest, he's not in the jail that he ran and oversaw. He is an hour and a half away in this county, Leslie County, that we were talking about. And tomorrow morning is that big, big day, because in another county, 2.5 hours from here, that's when his arraignment is taking place tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. And again, because all of the players know each other in this small county, this small community where this all took place, there is a special prosecutor assigned to the case and also a special judge. So we're getting new players that are going to be involved in this. But this sheriff will not be arraigned in person. He is actually going to appear via video. But tonight, he is finding himself on the other side of the bars here at this jail tonight.
And we're looking at the map, seeing how spread out everyone is because of the obvious conflicts associated with all of this. Let's go back to that small community, though, that was absolutely shaken by all of this. I understand you had an opportunity to speak with the mayor.
Yeah, we sat down with the mayor, Tiffany Kraft. She's a longtime resident of Whitesburg. She grew up there. Her late husband was actually the mayor at one point in time. That inspired her to run. And like most people that we're talking to today and over the past couple days during our Court TV investigation, absolutely shocked and shared this with us.
Yeah, I had gotten a phone call about what was happening as I was passing by the courthouse, actually. And it was from my mother, who works in the PBA office there, who is just right across the hallway from the judge's chambers. We didn't know who, we didn't know how bad it was, but we just knew that we had an active shooter. So I make it back to my office and find out that the judge had been shot. And when I found out the news of who did it, I didn't believe it at first. 2 stellar community members who are active in their community, who were great friends, and we never dreamed that anything like this would ever have happened.
You know, and everyone that we talked to, including the mayor there, Her Honor, says we hear the same thing, that both the suspect and the victim were friends and they were great guys. Everybody knew them. And she was at the memorial service for Kevin Mullins over the weekend, the late judge, and she said hundreds of people, her friends and family, showed up to pay their respects.
I'm looking at the picture of these 2 guys, and I could see them being friends. I mean, just looking at it, I mean, I could see that. Which makes this even more puzzling. And Matt, I understand we've uncovered some new audio recordings associated with this case?
Right, so this is not the 911 call, but this is the emergency call that went out to those first responders. And it really, when you listen to this, you hear just the urgency and the fright in even the dispatcher's voice. Take a listen.
36 needs to be at Fletcher County Courthouse. That shot's fired on the second floor. Shots fired on the second floor.
So again, you know, I mean, this is something that is unprecedented, uncharted waters for everyone involved, because it's the first responders that are responding to this, and they know the suspect and they know the victim, just like everybody else in the town, but they worked with them intimately. So this is just unreal for most people that have been touched by this in this small town.
And Matt, you've been on the ground there, obviously. A lot of rumors floating around, but any idea on the possible motive associated with this?
Yeah, and you brought it up earlier, right? It's that federal investigation, that federal lawsuit. That's what people keep on bringing up. There's no official motive in all of this that has come forward. Right now, all of this is still under investigation with the state police. But Court TV has obtained these court documents that I want to talk about briefly. The days leading up to this deadly shooting, just a couple days before, it was Sheriff Steins that was deposed in a federal lawsuit involving a former deputy under his command who pled guilty to forcing a woman to have sex with the deputy in Mullins' chambers. This happened years ago, after hours, in exchange to keep that person out of jail. We reached out to the attorneys, you know, and they say that they're actually waiting for the discovery in this murder case now to see if that will play into this other federal case, sex abuse case.
And in those papers, I mean, the allegations are not that the sheriff was taking part in all of it, but the sheriff was overseeing the deputy who was accused in all of this?
That's very correct. Yeah, I'm really glad that we're making that point. So there's no indication that the sheriff was involved in the sexual misconduct, but he was deposed and brought up into this lawsuit because he was the boss. And also, there is no allegations that the judge had any idea what was going on after hours in his chambers.
All right, Matt Johnson in Kentucky tonight. Big, big day tomorrow. I know we're going to be speaking tomorrow night as well. Thanks so much, Matt. I want to bring in a special guest joining us by phone tonight, the attorney who represents the woman suing Sheriff Mickey Steins. Ned Pillersdorf is with us. Ned, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Appreciate you having me.
Let me start here. What are the allegations against Sheriff Mickey Steins in this lawsuit?
The allegations is that Sheriff Steins had a deputy who was also a bailiff who preyed on at least 3 different women in the context of the courthouse. The deputy actually pled guilty to sex crime, and some of the sex crimes were committed in the judge's chambers. Basically, what the bailiff deputy did is he leveraged his position as someone who controlled the ankle monitor program and basically told these women have them go to jail unless they perform certain sexual acts with them. And this went on for several years. We named Sheriff Steins as a deputy in that our theory of the case is that he knew, or certainly should have known, of the predicate conduct of his bailiff deputy, who, as I indicated, pled guilty to at least 3 women. Also, we filed what's called a civil rights case. It's actually on behalf of one woman, Sabrina Atkins, who said the sex happened in the judge's chambers, and another woman who has since died.
And let me ask you this. In this lawsuit, were there any developments this week in the lawsuit or very recently in time connected to the sheriff?
What happened is Monday, Sheriff Steins was in my law office, and we took his deposition as to what he knew and when he knew it. 3 days later, we had the astonishing news that the sheriff killed the local judge. Yesterday, the civil lawsuit was put on hold, so basically we could try to figure out if any of these 2 events are connected.
So you're investigating that. How would you describe the sheriff's demeanor that day?
Well, in a sense, it was your typical civil lawsuit where you name a bill. It was tense, wasn't particularly friendly. And the allegations against the sheriff and his department are sweeping. We're basically saying they turned that courthouse into a brothel. What you need to understand is I'm a criminal defense lawyer, and women here in Appalachia, if they're in an ankle monitor situation or a drug court, are really vulnerable to sexual exploitation. They know the person controlling them can make a simple phone call to the judge and they're in jail. So what happened in this particular case is Ben Fields, the deputy who pled guilty, he leveraged that situation to have sex acts. And after we filed the civil lawsuit, and after we showed the Attorney General's office all the sexual text messages between Deputy Fields and with Deputy Fields and my client, they indicted Deputy Fields. And this past January, he pled guilty in his criminal case. So the civil rights case is going on now. And as I've indicated, we took Stein's deposition this past Monday here in my law office in Prestonsburg.
Was that a video deposition?
It was just a regular deposition.
So it's not, I'm wondering if it's recorded on video. Sometimes depositions where I practice in New Jersey, they would record them on video.
Now, this was just transcribed, but I did get a phone call the day after the astonishing shooting that the state police wanted a copy of the deposition. The deposition went on for 4 or 5 hours, and Steins was here in my office for about 8 hours.
And was there any mention of the judge in this deposition?
Peripherally. I'm really uncomfortable talking too much about what was said at the deposition. You know, there's ethical rules about lawyers talking about evidence that might be coming out, in this case, in 2 trials, the civil rights trial and, of course, Mr. Stein's trial. But, you know, clearly as I indicate, this was a sweeping lawsuit we filed. We're basically saying that the sheriff and probably others knew about what Deputy Fields was doing to at least 3 different women, and it went on for a while. So the theme of the deposition, the fairest way to describe it is, what did Sheriff Steins know and when did he know it? And we're talking about a small town courthouse. It's a one-judge courthouse with a local sheriff in a very small town of Whitesboro, Kentucky.
And just, I want to make this super clear that one of the assaults is taking place in the judge's chambers, but the judge was not named in the lawsuit and the judge was never deposed.
Correct. The judge named the lawsuit. But, you know, one wonders of the timing after this deposition Monday, which it's hard to describe, but after I filed the lawsuit, atmosphere when I was in Letcher Courthouse changed. They were pretty bold allegations we made. And frankly, I was uncomfortable being in that courthouse. In fact, when I asked Judge Mullins to recuse from the criminal case going on against the lady who was victimized, he certainly hesitated in getting out of the case, and I thought he should have gotten out of the case automatically. And as a result of that atmosphere, I declined to basically practice law in front of Judge Mullins again. He was very reluctant to get out of the lawsuit, and I thought it was automatic, and that the allegations my client had filed in federal court basically alleged the judge was likely a witness. I mean, the sex occurred at least twice, once in his chambers and once in the bathroom in his chambers.
Wow. So you, from your perspective, want to investigate and have time to see if there's any connection here. And it looks like the criminal investigation is looking towards you guys as well to see if there's any connection. So what are your thoughts about when it will become clear what the motivating factor of the shooting was, based on your experience?
There was an interesting court order entered, I think yesterday, that basically all of the parties, including my clients and the sheriff, and we did name Officer Fields, the judge basically said this case is held in abeyance so the parties can figure out if there's any connection between these two events.
Wow.
I don't know. I mean, when the shooting occurred, my first thought was, did this have anything to do with the allegations? There's been some public media reporting that apparently Sheriff Steins made some sort of cryptic comment that this may have had to do something to do with his wife or daughter. I don't know. But one wonders, 3 days after we took this deposition, which the allegations are, from our perspective, serious, and, in fairness to the defendants, they denied the allegations. 3 days later, you have this astonishing event. Have we ever had a sheriff before kill a judge in the courthouse? I mean, this sounds like a John Grisham thing.
It does. I'm trying to rack my brain to see. I've had sheriffs go after other sheriffs years ago in Georgia, but it was more of a political thing. This would be much, much different. Let me ask you, Ned, because you're a criminal defense attorney as well in Kentucky. We're all getting ready for this first appearance that's happening tomorrow. What should we expect to hear? What should we expect to learn at this first appearance?
What'll happen is Sheriff Steins will likely ask for what's called a preliminary hearing. And because he's in custody, that'll have to happen within 10 days unless he waives the time. The case has been transferred out of the county to a place called Carter County, which is actually about an hour and a half away. And they've already appointed the local Carter County judge. So it's far away. The local clerk's office obviously recused themselves. The prosecutor recused. And there is no judge in Letcher County today. So Sheriff Steins, has a right to what's called a preliminary hearing. Those are generally held within 10 days. Or what could happen is they could immediately go to the Letcher grand jury, which, given the nature of the case, might be problematic, and seek an indictment, which would prevent the preliminary hearing. But in the real world of practicing criminal law, preliminary hearings, that's where you learn a lot about the case. And there certainly is a lot of interest. And certainly if I was representing Sheriff Steins, which I obviously can't do to the conflict, I would want a preliminary hearing to hear what the evidence is against him. And there's certainly a whole bunch of people in Appalachia who are shocked and, I would say, traumatized by all of this.
Yeah, I think you described it right. I don't know if we've ever heard of this fact scenario in decades of covering trials here at Court TV. And so one final question before you go. Sheriff Steins, it seems like and this is someone who knows what's going to happen when you fire your weapon and take the life of a judge. Do you suspect that there's a chance that he could just, not in his first appearance, but just plead guilty?
No, that won't happen. I'm sure that won't happen.
Okay.
No, I mean, if you believe what's been reported in the media, apparently they looked at each other's cell phones, and that apparently, pardon the pun, was the triggering event. And I understand there's a video of that, no audio, but frankly, he couldn't plead guilty this tomorrow if he wanted to. He's the way it works in Kentucky. You're charged with a felony and you're in district court, and if the case he gets indicted, it would be in circuit court.
Then it goes to the circuit.
What will happen tomorrow? The judge will automatically enter a not guilty plea, and there'll be an inquiry as to whether or not he wants a preliminary hearing. And I suspect he will.
Ned Pillersdorf, we're going to be calling you a lot on this case. I hope you'll come back and join us.
I appreciate you having me.
All right. Thanks so much. Wow. A lot of information there. All right.
The sheriff walked in and asked whoever was in the chambers that he needed to speak with the judge in private, and the doors were closed.
And they couldn't hear any other conversation after that, even that there was conversation?
No, the next thing they heard is gunshots.
All this after looking at the judge's phone. That's when the gun was fired. After looking at the judge's phone, then he put it down, and then the gunfire started, and the judge was killed. So what's this all about? What happened here? Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight, trial attorney, fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers, Ann Bremner is with us. Also joining us, trial attorney, former police lieutenant Rick King, and deputy public defender for Los Angeles County, Philip Dubé. Great to see everyone. Ann Bremner, I'm trying to think of, all through the years we've been covering these stories on Court TV, I've never seen this particular scenario, I don't think.
Right.
But to me, it's whatever was on that phone. Could it be connected to this civil lawsuit, which is also somewhat connected to the sheriff? I mean, he's not the one accused of the sexual assaults, but it's a very small department. Your thoughts?
Well, we actually had a police chief out here kill his wife and himself in front of his kids, our second largest city in the state. And I was involved in some of that litigation. So, I mean, that's the closest I've seen in my practice in years, but it was pretty horrible, horrific incident. But I think, I look at this and it seems so personal that he basically is, he sees something on the phone and it sets him off. He's armed anyway, he's the sheriff. But there's been some rumors in the comment sections in some of the publications saying it was personal, had to do with the daughter of one of them, something like that. I could get that more with the heat of passion, kind of a shooting. A lawsuit? Geez, I mean, pretty hard to get worked up about a lawsuit when you're basically the one that's accused of, negligent retention and hiring and supervision. And the judge was involved in that too. That's his chambers. So
it's
maybe
his chambers,
connected.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's the only thing there is maybe he had something on that phone that just really got to the sheriff. His chambers, exactly.
Rick King, do you think it's coincidental in this small town in eastern Kentucky that we'd have a sexual assault in the judge's chambers, a deposition in a lawsuit connected to that sexual assault, and then 3 days later, a murder in the same judge's chambers?
I know it sounds very coincidental and it sounds like they should be related, but I agree with Ann in the sense that, sheriffs get sued for negligent retention, negligent hiring all the time. The municipality is on the hook for that. He's not named personally, so it's difficult for me to think that these incidents are related. I like Ann, I heard the scuttlebutt about something to do with one of their daughters or something, and I think that seems more plausible and more reasonable to me.
And that's very personal. All right, Philip Dubé, I'm going to try to beat you to the punch for once. So I'm going to put a statute up so you don't have to quote it without the folks at home seeing it. And we'll begin with murder in Kentucky. Let's take a look. A person is not guilty of murder if he acted under the influence of extreme emotional disturbance for which there was a reasonable explanation or excuse, the reasonableness of which is to be determined from the viewpoint of a person in the defendant's situation under the circumstances as the defendant believed them to be. So that would make him not guilty of murder, but a person is guilty of manslaughter when he or she causes the death of such person or of a third person under circumstances which do not constitute murder because he or she acts under the influence of extreme emotional disturbance. So if there was something on that phone, and the difference is drastic. Murder, 20 years is the minimum. Death is the maximum. Manslaughter is 10 to 20. 10 to 20. So Philip Dubé, is that what this case is? I mean, it's not who done it. I think they're going to be able to prove this. Video, eyewitnesses, surrendering himself. But is it going to be about the extreme emotional disturbance and what caused it?
Yes, that's the best you can hope for.
Did I beat you to the punch tonight? That's all I want to know. Is that what you were planning to do?
Not at all.
Oh, okay.
As a matter of fact, to be honest with you, I actually thought that maybe a federal criminal probe might be in the works, and that this particular sheriff was a little nervous, a little overwrought as to whether or not U.S. attorneys, FBI, or other federal officials may be involved in wanting to talk to the judge, talk to courtroom staff, jail personnel, to find out the full breadth and extent of what was going on in that courthouse, because those are blatant civil rights violations under criminal law, where law enforcement who act under color of law can be criminally prosecuted, and the penalties are quite severe. And in theory, the feds could go first, they could prosecute him, and certainly the state of Kentucky could prosecute him for the murder of that judge. But my spidey sense tells me that a federal criminal probe is afoot.
Okay, there you heard it.
Folks, I said it in my last video, and I'll say it again. There's so much more to this case. And I bet it's going to lead us down a rabbit hole that is very, very deep. Whatever took place between the sheriff and the judge, two friends, two colleagues in that courthouse in Letcher County on September 19th of 2024, probably just started to uncover the darkness that has been brewing there for God knows how long. And the residents of Letcher County think they're shocked now. They may want to strap in and prepare themselves for what's coming, because it isn't going to be pretty. They need our prayers. Thank you so very much for watching. I appreciate it. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you on my next video.